Welcome to the Indigenous Approach, a podcast where we examine the role of the nation's premier partnership force across the competition continuum, from cooperation to conflict and everything in between.
In this episode of the Indigenous Approach, Colonel Ryan Ehrler, commander of the 1st Special Forces Group Airborne, and Colonel Ed Croot, Chief of Staff of the 1st Special Forces Command Airborne, discuss the importance of relationships in the Indo-Pacific, concept of cross-functional teams, and innovation.
Greetings, name's Colonel Ed Croot. I'm the Chief of Staff at 1st Special Forces Command and appreciate you joining us for another episode of the Indigenous Approach.
Hi, I'm Ryan Ehrler. I am the commanding officer out at 1st Special Forces Group. It's an honor to be here. I look forward to getting a chance to talk about everything we have going on in the Indo-Pacific region. And I would like to say hi to my wife Anna and my son Ryder and my daughter Amelia out in Spokane, Washington. My wife is in command of the 22nd Training Squadron. She is an Air Force officer, and I couldn't be prouder of her.
Ryan, how you doing?
Doing great. How about yourself?
Good. Hey, as the commander of 1st Special Forces Group out in Washington, I'd like to put you on the spot right up front. What's one thing that folks in your command don't know about you?
Something they don't know about me? Well, I do talk quite a bit, so they probably know a lot about me by now. I try to go through a little bit of my history, how I grew up in 10th Group, so I was not a native of 1st Group, but I did have the honor of being the deputy commander out there 2 years ago, and I spent the majority of my war college time studying the Indo-Pacific and the challenges that we face out there. So I feel like I've returned as a group commander. I can't say ready to command because there's just so much going on in the Indo-Pacific, but I've certainly invested a lot of time in the academic side of the house. But I think, the beauty of the Special Forces Regiment is we've worked together for so long, from 20 years in combat, that many of the people I work with now, I've actually had the chance to work with previously. In fact, the first guy when I showed up to 1st Group, the first guy I ran into was an Echo on my team at 10th Group. So it really is a small community. Long answer to a short question. I'm not sure what they don't know about me, but maybe we'll get to it in the conversation.
Well, I'll ask you one.
Okay.
So I believe I saw a picture of you, and it looked like you were flying a plane.
So my wife's a pilot. She is in the Air Force. She flies AC-130s. She likes to tell me that she's got significantly more confirmed kills than I have. But she hasn't had the joy of living on the ground and really enjoying the smell of being overseas. But I am a private pilot, commercial pilot. I enjoy flying on the side. My wife being in the Air Force, we have to live in separate locations, so having an airplane to make the commute makes life a little bit easier. And hopefully we'll be setting our children up. I have a 5 and a 4-year-old. Maybe they'll want to be pilots too and go to the Air Force Academy and save mom and dad a little bit of money
That's
and tuition.
Awesome. That's cool. Now, did you become a pilot after you met your wife, or was that something you had done beforehand?
No, I've always wanted to be a pilot since probably before Top Gun came out, but I think that might have sealed the deal. But in 1992, when I graduated high school, the requirements to fly fighters in the Air Force was 20/20 uncorrected, and I had 20/40 in my right eye. So when I said I couldn't be a fighter pilot, I figured I'd want to be a commando. And so I found a way once I got back to the States in 2003. I had been stationed overseas prior to that. I got my pilot's license out at the Peterson Aero Club in Colorado Springs while I was at 10th Group, and I've been flying ever since and I love it.
Where were you at stationed in Europe?
So I spent time in Germany with 1st Armored Division, 16th Engineer Battalion, and then prior to that I was in Korea, 2nd Engineer Battalion, 2nd Infantry Division.
Awesome. Cool. Appreciate that. Mm-hmm. We won't tell anybody else that you put commando second behind pilot. It's okay.
Hey, gotta do what you gotta do. If you can't land them, you jump out of them, right?
So, hey, we're lucky to have you today as the commander of 1st Special Forces Group, and really appreciate your time. I know, the command looks to 1st Special Forces Group as one of those groups that truly is persistently present in a region. And so, within the podcast Indigenous Approach, what we're trying to do is just have a conversation about, what our value is to the nation. Mm-hmm. And we like to say that, hey, 1st Special Forces Command is in over 70 countries at any one time. And so as the nation is asking us to reinforce our partnerships and our relationships and to be persistently present with our partners, 1st Group certainly does that in the Indo-Pacific. Can you help us understand a little bit better why that's so important and what that's like out in Asia?
Absolutely. Well, first, everything we do ties back to our guidance documents. And when you go back to the 2017 national security strategy, it specifically talks about our constellation of partners and allies. And I really think the Asia-Pacific region or the Indo-Pacific region is a perfect example of how important that is. When you look at the level and the skill of our partners throughout the entire region, it's just impressive. And it makes my job fun, however challenging, because there is just such a wide assortment of people to work with. I mean, we have Mongolia in the north, who are just a fantastic partner, although they are kind of in a developing role as far as a military that projects power outside, fulfilling UN requirements, assisting us in Afghanistan, really kind of building their reputation on the international stage. Move down south. Now you've got India, a world-class partner who, certainly capable of doing things on their own. So we have a chance to work with them, share our tactics, techniques, and procedures, and also learn from them. And then as you move to the east, you've got all of our partners and allies throughout the Southeast Asia region, really anchored by Thailand, a longtime partner with whom we have been working for years. First group personnel have been going to Thailand since the 60s. And even earlier, it's really just the anchor point of our relationship there in Southeast Asia. And we've got some great burgeoning relationships with folks in Laos. I had a chance to visit Vietnam, actually while I was at the War College last year, and talk about opportunities there. Really just an eager partner. I think we'll be able to do a lot of great things with them in the future. Unfortunately, we've lost a little bit of access in Cambodia. We used to work with them pretty frequently, but they've come under some economic pressure recently, and they've essentially backed out of some of the partnership opportunities we've had with them, but always looking to get back in and work with the Cambodian military. Move down into the islands and the archipelago. Our Indonesian brothers and sisters, really just a fantastic opportunity to work with the Kapausis units there. Absolutely talented soldiers, individuals. I think they identify that there are terrorist threat problems throughout the region, and they're just eager to work with us. Malaysia as well, just great partners there. And then move back up through the Philippines. Long relationship with the Philippines. Whether we were assisting them with the Abu Sayyaf or relying on them for access and placement in the region, they're really just great partners, great place to train. We get so much out of that partnership, and I hope we share the same with them. And then, of course, our Japanese brothers and sisters working with the Japanese Special Operations, the Japanese Ground Self-Defense Force, really just fantastic partners, world-class capabilities. Another entity that they've generally restricted to their islands, but a great organization for us to train with, and hopefully will become more of a player on the world stage as they get the opportunity to send advisors and assistants out into the world. And then, of course, moving on to Korea, where our Republic of Korea, SWIC partners, just fantastic. They've got a real threat to their north that we get a chance to train with them. It's one of the better places in Asia to train combined arms maneuver, where we can really link up that special operations force and that conventional force relationship.
Yep.
And show them the value of that. And again, we learn a lot from them. And then last, of course, and certainly not least, our Australian and New Zealand partners. I can't say enough about those guys. They've supported us during our engagements overseas, be it in Iraq and Afghanistan, but also just long-term partners. And I tell you, it's funny when you get to go over there, and when you do get to go to a multilateral exercise, and you see, Filipino military and Japanese military and U.S. military and Australian military training together. If you stand far enough back and don't listen to the accent, it gets pretty hard to tell them apart. It really is. It's just fantastic to see how we've all kind of grown together in the Pacific to kind of mesh that litany of relationships together. It's a great place to work, and it's exciting to be a part of.
You literally just ripped off a 3-minute tour of the Asia Pacific. As the 06 commander of the Regionally Aligned 1st Special Forces Group. I wonder, where else in our inventory do we have that? I've often heard the one thing you can't surge is trust. Mm-hmm. And that only comes from, repeated relationship building over time. So as officers, we do move around. Brag on your NCOs and your warrants for a second. Tell us a story about one of them that has 9, 10, 20-year relationships with some of the partners that are out there.
There's too many to brag on just one, but I'll start at the top. So my command Sergeant Major Danny Orozco, he's been in First Group for 26 years. He's probably got more deployments, not only to the Middle East and to Afghanistan, because that is what the U.S. Army has asked us to do recently, but he has got multiple rotations in Thailand, in Bangladesh, in India, in the Philippines. He was stationed in Okinawa, Japan with our forward staged 1st Battalion for a long time. So he can literally go to almost any country in Asia and find a local who is probably either a senior officer or a senior NCO and talk about the times that they spent as young sergeants. We just came back from visiting Japan, and he had a chance to link up with one of the Japanese warrant officers who is essentially a senior sergeant major, the senior enlisted individual in that organization. And as soon as we see them, it's arms around each other. They're like old friends and taking silly photos together. And all business during the day and at night when we get together, it's literally their families know each other. They can have those deep conversations. It's fantastic to see. Now you fast forward to the youngest guy in 1st Special Forces Group, who maybe is just getting back from their first JSET or their Joint Combined Exchange training opportunity, or their first deployment into theater to work with a partner. And we try to reinforce to them of make friends, get those folks up on the different communications apps. I have friends on Signal and WhatsApp and Telegram, and I keep in touch with folks from those countries. And I asked my junior NCOs as well to do that, because the people they work with today are going to be the senior leaders in those countries in the future. So you take folks. We had an officer who is down in Special Operations Command Pacific now. He did an Olmsted Scholarship rotation in Thailand, fluent Thai speaker. So every time he goes back, he is it's like a rock star walking the street to watch him just blend in. When he goes back, he can have conversations with folks, and it really is a blending of the cultures. And the people appreciate that. When folks overseas see an American who is making an effort to understand their culture and an effort to speak their language, I think they respect the investment that we're putting into it. I think that investment shows how much we care about our partnership.
And we all have a lot of interagency experience, and you look at the way that the State Department rotates, or other agencies. You're hard pressed to really find an organization with its people, like its NCOs and its warrants, that are regionally aligned over a long time. And we did have to meet the nation's call in Afghanistan and Iraq, and we all had those experiences. But as the nation is pivoting back toward this concept of competition, we're already there. We have been there and never left. And I think that you can't surge that. And everything you just described is exactly what I always thought was the most rewarding about being a Green Beret. So let me ask you this now. As the Special Forces Commander for the region, when we talk about this concept of cross-functional teams, and we start to add in our civil affairs, our psychological operations, our intelligence brothers and sisters into this, what does that mean to you?
It means building a team that is right for the specific mission. The beauty of the region is if you've been to one country in Asia, you've been to one country in Asia. So everywhere we go, there's a different requirement. And frankly, some of what we do is basic soldier tasks that we are training with our partners on. Some partners we hit the ground and we just run together because we've worked together with them so long. Some partners with whom we have a beginning relationship, we may start off on more military-focused tasks. But in all of those cases, we want to document what we're doing. We want to be able to show that host country why they are putting an investment. Why are they inviting Westerners? Why are they inviting the United States into their country to share this training? Why are they sending their soldiers overseas to the United States to train in our training facilities? And we really want to let them tell their story. So part of that is including some of those information operations soldiers there, so they can capture that footage, blend it with other footage that we bring, we call B-reel footage, and let them put together a snippet for their local news and release it through the public affairs shop. Or let them put together something for their recruiting videos that they might use to help influence their population to join them moving forward. And then now you add on our civil affairs brothers and sisters. I mean, some places where we are going don't necessarily need a military touch. They might just want a little bit of civic assistance. Sometimes humanitarian assistance after a wildfire or after an earthquake or after a tsunami. Sometimes those are the right people to go in and be prepared to share some of that assistance. But the beauty of Asia is it's quite a large place. So really, when something happens, the forces available are the forces that are there. So when you build a team, when you put a special forces team in with civil affairs, with the information operations folks, with some public affairs folks, with some medical folks, etc., and you build that cross-functional team, you are now able to go in and efficiently, because you've only had to pay for one plane ticket, you're all there in the country, you can train all those capabilities at the same time. If something does happen locally, you can respond to it. And frankly, we try to meet the needs of the host nation. So sometimes they ask for a specific training program of instruction, right. and we're able to provide that then by having that cross-functional team that has worked together, has trained together, has planned together, and knows each other. Because the reality is even with the COVID separation, it's still an individual human game. And no matter how much we try to telework, no matter how much we try to video teleconference, it's still, you call the people that you know. Yeah. So by building those relationships through deployments, those teams now, again, a young captain in the Special Forces, a young captain in the Civil Affairs, when they grow up and they're sitting in my seat or your seat, they can now reach across and talk to a friend of theirs who may now be working in a different theater, or luckily maybe still in the same theater, and present some of those options to our decision makers based on those years and years of experience and relationships.
No, that's a great point. You said something in there that I want to re-attack for a second. So the name of this podcast is the Indigenous Approach. And so can you talk a little bit about what Indigenous Approach means to you? And really, is it most important what we're doing, or is it more important what we're doing for the partner or helping the partner to grow their capability?
I think there's two answers to that. Of course, I'm a soldier. My job is to go where my country needs me, to fight for the values and the freedoms that our country holds dear. And so, every soldier needs a weapon system. A tanker drives an M1 tank. A pilot flies an aircraft. My weapon is my relationship with my Indigenous partners. I go in as a small team. I, speaking on behalf of the Special Forces Regiment, I go in as a small team and I train, recruit, rally, or frankly, inspire our partners and allies in a region to help themselves. And thereby, we become a very small enabling element that has outsized impacts in the region. So if we can go into a country and help them do something that the United States then doesn't have to do, that is truly a weapon system. So in times of war, we are a weapon system, and we are leveraging our relationships to help that partner or ally accomplish missions that are in line with what the United States needs. But in times of peace, we are in building those relationships and sharing that our experiences and sharing our knowledge and teaching and oftentimes learning from our partners so that they can provide for their own security, they can provide for the support of their own people, and they can hopefully spread the ubiquitous values of democracy and freedom so that we don't have to go there as a U.S. military system. I would much rather have our local partners handle their own problems and just slap them on the back and tell them what a good job they did than put American sons and daughters in harm's way.
Sure. No, that's a great point. Okay. With that, I want to transition to our last topic, this concept of innovation. Now, just to rewind the tape a little bit for the viewing audience, Chris Brose, who was senior advisor to Senator McCain, he wrote a book called The Kill Chain. And so our very first podcast episode was an interview with him. And we did that to build some context for our first ever Innovation Symposium. And so coming out of that conversation and the Innovation Symposium, we really kind of started to settle in on this concept that modernization is how to make what you already have better, but that innovation was something a little bit more. And that once you really understand what your organization uniquely does for the nation, and then truly think about what the future environment that you're going to have to apply that force in looks like, innovation is when you then start to ask the hard questions. Okay, what don't we have? What doesn't exist that we're going to need to innovate on to eventually solve certain gaps or problems in that future environment for us? So I'm not suggesting that you have to adopt that definition by any means, because you dedicated last year at the Army War College to thinking about this as your research topic. So I'm personally very interested to hear your thoughts on that topic and what that means to you as the first group commander.
Yeah, innovation is something I'm super passionate about. I think it stems a little bit from the fact that I think I am a bit of a closet nerd. I grew up watching everything from Star Wars to Star Trek, and I have a vision that there is a technological solution to many of our problems, not all. But I think the beauty of what we do is we have a group of people who are thinkers. What I tell people, and I want to just caveat this with most of the things I'm saying are not original thoughts. I stand on the shoulders of giants, as Isaac Newton said, and so I may be echoing some of the things that my CSM or my Command Sergeant Major has already said. But essentially, our people's job is to shoot, move, communicate, medicate, and think. And really that thinking is what sets us apart, I think, from our adversaries, our individual soldiers. They come up with fantastic ideas. So my job as a group commander is to build that environment so that we can capture those ideas. Because, ideas, they're kind of like a butterfly. They show up, they sit there, they're beautiful, and then they're gone, and you might never see them again. So you have to be there to somehow capture that idea and to set an environment and build an ecosystem where one of our soldiers sees a problem, thinks about a solution to it, draws it on the back of a napkin. What do they do with it then? We need to build an environment where they can quickly link up with somebody who may have the ability to take that diagram, put it into a computer-aided design program, and spit out a first iteration of a 3D printed solution. And then take it back to that individual and see what they think, and then iterate on it again and again. And maybe it's just something that the person has a sketch on the idea, and it's not something we can make on a 3D printer or cut out of a piece of billet aluminum on a CNC machine, but we can capture it and pass it up higher to your headquarters, where you can take someone who maybe has some additional schooling and experience and figure out how to approach that solution. Because at the end of the day, there's two places where innovation is going to happen. It's in the laboratory or in Silicon Valley, where big brains who are far away from the problem are thinking about these things, or down in the trenches, where somebody is right close to the problem. They see just how hot the flame is, but they don't have the skills and the tools to really put onto pen, paper, computer design program, etc., their idea. So we have to bridge that gap. And that's the ecosystem I'm trying to set for the teams. And I really think by empowering the groups and the battalions and having individuals as far down as the team level who understand that technology, they can help develop that solution. And sometimes it's as easy as having a sewing machine available for them to change the way their equipment is oriented. But I also think sometimes it is having someone who can take an idea and recognize that a computer algorithm with some AI learning against it may be able to root through a bunch of information and from a data set that already exists, find a way to get to an answer for that individual who says, hey, Walmart knows what I want to buy when I walk in the store. How do they do that? Why can't I know exactly what the enemy is going to do based on things that they have done for their entire career? Those are the types of ideas that we need to capture and present back to our soldiers as quickly and as efficiently and as often as possible.
That's all. I love the way you put that. When we say, and another thing to jump into something you said there, we like to say we have the world's best problem solvers. Why is that, do you think?
I think we attract the kind of people that like to solve problems. Everyone joins the military because they want to have fun, they want some experiences, they want to see the world, they want some new opportunities. But I think the people that come to special operations like to overcome challenges. I mean, we set the bar high right off the bat with our litany of assessment and selection programs. Whether you're going to be an 18 series or a Special Forces officer or NCO or warrant officer going through Special Forces assessment and selection,
right,
or going to the civil affairs, or going to the psychological operations, there is a bar to entry. There's a challenge laid before you. Folks who overcome that challenge are the kind of people that we want, and then we want to take those attitudes and cultivate them. I think it's much like in World War II when the British were looking for code breakers, and they would put out crossword puzzles and other logic problems, looking for people who wanted to overcome challenges, because that sets your bar. You identify those kind of people. Now we have an entire community of people like that, and they're just feeding off of each other. They're overseas staring at the same problem, and it becomes a competition. Who can solve that problem? Whether it's who can do the most push-ups this morning or carry a ruck the furthest, that's one approach. But other people, they just want to have a challenge. They see a problem out there. They think to themselves, hey, everyone has a cell phone. Why can't I figure out who's around me just by having an application on my cell phone that figures out what other phones are around me? Why do I have to know how to pick out individuals from a crowd? I can do that digitally and put it on my fancy watch. And there's people that want to crack those challenges. So we owe it to them and to ourselves, frankly, to build in that ecosystem so that we can get them the schooling or get them the training or get them the equipment, because a lot of that equipment is publicly available and the bar to entry has gotten a lot lower. It's become a lot cheaper. We can give them the tools to invent those devices, try them out, and iterate and get better. And now we are keeping people who are intrigued. We are keeping people who maybe they would have gotten out after 4 years because they had their experiences, they lived overseas, they've enjoyed their time, but it's time to move on to something bigger. Well, we're offering them that chance to try something bigger, to try something better, to show them that the next challenge is just around the corner. Help us get there. And I'm inspired by it, and I hope we inspire them. And if we don't, we have to make sure we set an environment where they'll tell us what they want so we can give them what they need, because frankly, we spend so much money and invest so much time and energy into training quality people. We have to find a way to keep them around as long as possible.
Could not agree more. All right. Well, hey, listen, I really appreciate your time today. We're lucky to have you doing an amazing things out at 1st Special Forces Group. Let me ask you one final question.
Please.
What sets 1st Special Forces Group apart?
Well, we do say we're first in Asia, so we have a massive area of responsibility. We have people from Joint Base Lewis McChord in Washington, right there in the shadow of Rainier, all the way out to the far end of India and up to Mongolia. It's a fantastic environment for folks to explore. We have so many rich and unique cultures where we get to spend our time. Frankly, I hope I ever get a chance to go to China and see some of the amazing things over there. I love the culture. I would love to meet some of the people. I know we are challenged by the government right now, but I hope we can get past that someday. Frankly, we have a very unique challenge. We are at the cutting edge of where our country needs us to be, and we are challenged by distance. We are challenged by a very technical and savvy competitor, and we are surrounded by really high-quality partners. So going to work every day is really, it's fun and it's challenging, and it just kind of makes you want to go back the next day and see how much further down the field you can push the ball.
All right, we'll really appreciate it. Thanks for your time, and it's clear that 1st Special Forces Group is in great hands.
All right, thanks, Ed.
Take
Thanks
care,
for
man.
having me.
COVID fist bump.
Fist
Appreciate
bump.
it.
This has been the Indigenous Approach. We hope you have enjoyed this episode. Follow us on social media, and if you have suggestions for topics or guests, send us a message. Thank you for listening.